What's up, guys? TG here. Actual legitimate content today. We're gonna start doing like our little series of videos of instruction. Maybe each guy is gonna take on their favorite technique. Mine is gonna be Froggin Diaries. So yeah, we're just gonna start with the basics. It's gonna be fun. Gonna keep it light. So yeah, frogging is my favorite technique. I do it from when the water pretty much gets the ice off of it up in Wisconsin. So I frog anywhere from 38 degrees up until 100 degree water temp or whatever the highest is. Obviously, you're not gonna get 100 degree water temp up in Wisconsin, but you know what I mean. So I'm gonna be right now. This first video is just gonna be the really bare bones basics. So if you hardcore frog, maybe look for my later episodes, the ones that are really technique specific. But right now I'm just gonna focus on just what you need to do it and tiny little tips. So yeah, this video might not be super informative for you guys, but hey, it's helpful. Anything helps. So right now the highlight of the tackle that we need, I'm gonna have a heavy rod, a high gear ratio reel with a really good drag system, and braided line and a frog. So what I like to choose are Abu Garcia, the Revo SX, because it has a 22-pound drag and a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel, and I think it's the smoothest reel out there. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that, but I just personally really like Abu products. I use the Veritas rod, the 7-foot heavy, extra fast. I use 65-pound Power Pro, always 65-pound. I mean, some people prefer 50, but you pretty much just want to do the highest that you can get away with, and 80 is a little too thick for me because I can't get as accurate or as far a cast, but 65 seems to be that perfect medium, because 50, it's a little bit too low of diameter, where backlashes cause they're a lot more frequent, and especially if you're into skipping and target casting and all that good stuff. So, I like to keep it around 65, and it is the just all-around best line, Power Pro. The wax covering on it is perfect. Right out of the box, it's perfectly. It doesn't need to really be broken in that much. So yeah, but now the frog that I use, I stopped using any other frog besides Spro frogs. I mean, I like Ish's fat frogs a little bit, but they're really, pretty much the Spros are the best frog on the market. Their hooks are perfect. Everything is just so finely tuned. They really just catch more fish than anything else. So that's what I'm gonna always explain and always demonstrate with is a Spro frog. Now, the size of the rod is pretty much dependent on the angler, but you really want to keep this in mind. I like to go smaller as opposed to a longer rod, especially because I target cast more. So I'm roll casting a lot more than I'm overhand casting. So the overhand casting, I have a 7.3 heavy action with a fast tip. So that's for bomb casts and wrenching them out of the really thick, really heavy cover. But I don't have a problem with it with my 7-foot, which is my primary frogging rod. 7-foot extra fast tip and a heavy action rod. Now the reason this is that when I'm frogging, I frog around everything. I frog around docks, I frog around laydowns, I frog around pads. But I always like to get that rod really close down to the surface so I can swing it right underneath stuff. And I'll go over skipping and stuff like that in a later episode, because that's a little bit more technical and a lot more explanation involved. But I like to stick with a 7, but I'm also a short guy, so 7-foot is fine with me, whereas a 7.3 might be okay for somebody who's 6 foot or taller. 7.3 might be a perfect one, and you might want to go up to 7 and 6 when you're doing a long cast. But always a heavy action rod. You really want something with a lot of power that wrenches them out. And like I already said, the 22-pound drag on the Abu products are perfect. You want something that doesn't slip when you set the hook, because chances are when you're over something, when you're casting over like a brush pile or something like that, you're going to want to get that fish out of there as quickly as possible. You don't want him shaking his head down, getting down deep into the garbage where the hook will free. Doesn't matter how heavy the line is, the hook will pop out sometimes. So yeah, and 7-foot, like the extra fast tip also really helps with skipping, or with walking the dog, and that is another thing I'll explain in a different episode. So yeah, the settings of the reel. Now, for beginners, I would at least put the brakes on a little bit and keep the spool tension up, so that you don't want too many backlashes because it can get frustrating. But when you're, more experienced, I pretty much turn my brakes off because it gives you a lot more control and it gives you a lot longer cast if you can control the frog. And the Spro is weighted really, really nice, where it doesn't take too much messing around with the spool tension so that you don't backlash enough. Two more things real quick. Bowstring wax. This is the thing that Toad Jr. taught me. He it's like a little chapstick tube, and you just put it on your line, and it gives the line a little bit more buoyancy. Now this helps for like Suffix 832 or some sinking braids, but for Power Pro it comes with good wax. But if your Power Pro's old and you're on like a budget or something, you don't always want to replace your line, this is perfect, and it gets the nice wax coating on it, and it gives that thing a lot more buoyancy, which is really essential, especially if you're walking the dog with the frog. Sorry, that was really fast words right there. And another thing, carry Sprite in the boat all the time, because sounds strange, but it works. When you frog fish a lot, your tendency is to hook them in the tongue for some odd reason. I really can't explain why, but you do hook the fish a lot in the tongue, and that is a death sentence a lot of the times because their gills are right there. They just bleed out. So carrying Sprite in the boat, actually what it does is it acts as like a coagulant for the fish. I think it's the citric acid and the sugar combination really cauterizes up the wound, and it does save your fish from dying, especially in a tournament situation or in any situation. You don't really want a fish dying. So yeah, I mean, in the future I'm going to be going over more stuff like what I fish, what kind of structure to look for, what kind of cover to look for, really, really specific things. But right now I'm just going to keep it simple with the 7-foot rod, high gear ratio, high drag power reel. The settings is the way I explain them, and the braided line. I mean, pretty simple stuff, but hey, need to start somewhere, right?